Hello, pattern readers. So the Wheel of Time is just casually dropping 24-second teasers on a Thursday these days, which is awesome. This one happens to just be about Shadowspawn, and so I couldn't pass up the opportunity to talk about that. I want to do a couple of things with this. First, this is a great little teaser for new viewers to the series to get a little bit more familiar with creatures of the Dark One, also called Shadowspawn or Servants of the Dark, and other names. These are unique elements to the Wheel of Time, and so people are going to have to learn about this as they're getting into the series. So I wanted to do a little spoiler-free primer on that. Then I'm going to be breaking down the teaser in more detail, talking about what I think it's showing us. Because I'm going to be speculating about how I think these shots might fit into the season, that will include some spoilers for Book 1, The Eye of the World. And then I'm going to end with talking about a few other images that we've gotten over the past week that I haven't had a chance to talk about, just because it'll be nice to end with something a little bit more comforting after a more chilling video. Now, 2 quick things before we get to that teaser in case you missed it. Number 1, I recently started a Patreon, so I'd love it if you check that out if you want to and if you're able to support the channel. Number 2, I'm also involved with another channel, WoT the Adaptation, and we recently did a video talking about the Wine Spring Inn clip, really going in detail and talking about some of the changes we can predict from what we see there. I have some great conversations with Max and the Geeky Hippie, so I'd love it if you would check that out as well. Now, are your loins girded? Because it's time to get to that teaser.
Armies of Trollocs and Fades, 1,000,000 strong, will wash across the land, killing and eating every person they find.
And you can't outrun a Fade.
So I hope you aren't watching this teaser right before bed, huh? Now, for the purposes of the spoiler-free section of this video, I am going to be focusing on the 2 varieties of Shadowspawn that we can clearly see in the teaser. There's the more numerous Trollocs, and then the more terrifying Myrddraal or Fades. Like other terrifying creatures that we see in other fantasy worlds, these creatures were initially created by humans, or in this case, one human in particular. But let's back up a bit because there are some other terms related to the shadow that you're going to want to be familiar with first. I'm going to give a brief in-world history lesson. These are things that are revealed over a little bit of course of time in the books, and I'm sure they will be in the show as well. So some people might prefer to just go into the show and let it come at them as it comes. Other people would prefer to have a bit of a primer going into it to help them understand. So, choose your own adventure. Now, the Dark One is a force of evil and destruction that is said to be bound in a prison outside the pattern of existence from the moment of creation so that it cannot actually touch the world. However, a few thousand years prior to the events of this story, the prison was damaged just prior to a cataclysmic event called the Breaking of the World. To prevent the Dark One from escaping, 7 seals were created as a kind of patch on this prison using the one power, force of magic in the world that channelers can access. But now those seals are weakening. When the seals were created, not only the Dark One, but also 13 of his most powerful followers called Forsaken were bound in the prison as well. Prison is also sometimes called Sheol Ghul. The Forsaken are human and very powerful channelers. They call themselves the Chosen, and they also chose new names for themselves, but this is not a video about the Forsaken. Suffice it to say that one of the Forsaken made it his work to mess around with human-animal hybrid breeding and other rather horrifying experiments that led to the creation of Shadowspawn. So he is the one that is responsible for the creation of Trollocs and Myrddraal. Trollocs are sort of the grunts of the Shadowspawn. They are larger than humans and extremely strong and physically powerful, difficult to kill. They appear to be roughly human-like, but with animal-like features such as horns or hooves, in some cases claws or beaks or snouts or fur that make them disturbing to look at. There are many varieties of Trollocs, and they form social groups or distinct tribes within their armies. Some are capable of human speech, but they also have their own spoken and written language. They are considered less intelligent than humans. But they are carnivorous, they will eat humans, they are driven by cruelty and hatred and a desire to kill. And they're also fearful and require some control to keep them in order in battle or to get them to undertake certain tasks. This is where Murdral often come in. Their breeding is a sort of accident of Trolloc breeding. About 5% of all Trolloc offspring will be a Murdral. They go by many names, including Fades and Lurks and Halfmen and the Eyeless. They are always male and sterile. They appear almost human-like, but stronger and faster, with pale skin, which is entirely smooth where their eyes should be. Their sight is excellent, despite their lack of eyes. They create a sense of fear by their very presence and are able to disappear into shadows. Their greater intelligence and relative fearlessness allows them to direct and sometimes outright control a group of Trollocs in battle. In some cases, they must link with the Trollocs in order to control them. But this does allow for the possibility of the Trollocs all being killed instantly if the Fade is able to be killed. It is extremely difficult to kill a Fade, and they do not die instantly, remaining dangerous even in their death throes. They are even more sadistic than a Trolloc, and they carry more dangerous weapons, which can corrupt and kill even with a relatively slight injury. There is a great deal more I could say about these creatures, but this is just meant to be a spoiler-free introduction to these two most common types of Shadowspawn to help new viewers be able to distinguish and help identify what kind of threats they pose. There are many other kinds of Shadowspawn in the books, but it remains to be seen which of these we will also see in the show. Overall, on the design choices made by the show to develop these creatures, I'm really impressed. Both look realistic and fitting to the way the creatures are described, and very suitably disturbing to look at. The mouth of the Fade is certainly a major addition, but I like the way it appears very human-like when closed, allowing them to pass themselves off as human with a low hood, but also allowing for an extremely quick transition to something deeply terrifying. This allows the show to accomplish something that is described in the books but is not easy to create, an immediate and visceral fear in the viewer. Something appearing close to normal, but just slightly off, and then capable of a split-second transformation into a nightmare. Now I want to transition to breaking down this teaser in more detail. So from here on out, there will be book spoilers, though I am limiting it to book 1, The Eye of the World. But if you do need to avoid that, I hope you will check out my other spoiler-free content and subscribe. The teaser starts with Trollocs and a Fade on horseback, marching slowly and approaching water, most likely a river. It appears to be evening or night. They carry torches and weapons. I suspect this could be related to the crossing of the Tarn River. We know in the book that our group crosses the river by ferry and that we will see the same thing occur in the show in episode 2. Shadowspawn are pursuing them, and we never see how they cross because they're further behind. Perhaps this is something we get as a reminder about that pursuit. Cut back to the Fade, leading the Trollocs. This is the same shot we saw a bit of in the teaser trailer, and then cut to a close-up on hooves. The hooves are on a wooden surface, perhaps a dock. Also, they could be the Fade's horse, but they might just as well be Trolloc hooves. Then they cut to Lan, looking a little travel or battle-worn, and then Moiraine, most likely in the same scene. They have their horses with them, and they're looking at something. We cut back to the Fade at the head of a group of Trollocs, and then this is when we get the open-mouth shot from the teaser trailer. If I had to guess, this is likely as they are about to be overtaken by Shadowspawn while on the road. And if we're following the books, they will have to fight, and Moiraine will be able to hold them off enough for the group to escape. However, this attack is what would force them to take refuge in Shadar Logoth, a place even Fades fear to go. So I am expecting this conflict will also take place in episode 2, and Moiraine will be injured from it, and then the group will go to Shadar Logoth. The voiceover says, armies of Trollocs and Fades, 1,000,000 strong, will wash across the land, killing and eating every person they find. This is Moiraine's voice, and although it certainly could be something recorded for this teaser, it also is a perfectly reasonable line to have in the show if she's explaining to the Two Rivers characters what they will be facing. We then get a bunch of quick shots, Trollocs running through a forest at night, and then in a village, and then this shot of Trollocs approaching in a village with an orange light, probably from fire, behind them. One raises its weapon. That's a shot from the teaser as well, and I'm pretty sure all of this is the attack on Emond's Field. Then we have them bursting through a door, perhaps the wine spring, Trollocs attacking someone. We can see a human figure down on the ground in front of what looks like a cart or wagon, and then back to Trollocs attacking. Then a cut to black before we hear a different voice saying, "And you can't outrun a Fade." That is over a shot of this fade, also from the trailer, where it isn't immediately obvious that it isn't human. I like that this is the last shot because it is almost more alarming to think about the fact that fades can pass for human if they're trying to. Then we get the Wheel of Time logo to end the clip. So for my part, I think this little teaser gives us more of the Shadowspawn attack on Emmons Field, and then some clips of what seem to be 2 to 3 other incidents. My guesses are Shadowspawn approaching the Taran River, and this is around the time that the group would be crossing. And then Shadowspawn attacking the group after they've crossed the river and before they can reach any other point of safety, which then precipitates their flight to Shadar Logoth. And then there's this final shot, which cannot be positively placed in time. It could be that this is the very first glimpse they ever show us of a Myrddraal before the audience will know for sure that it isn't human. Or it could occur potentially at almost any other point. The only thing we can say for sure is it looks like the woods at night. Here is my guess. We'll get a glimpse of an alarming figure on horseback, such as this one, in the first episode, that would start rumors and alert the village that there is some potential threat lurking. Then we will get this shot from the teaser trailer on Winter Night. It seems to be connected to this recent Winespring Inn clip that was just released. It will look like it could be a fade approaching the inn. However, it will turn out to be Lan. These would explain why when Lan enters the inn, Nynaeve is particularly alarmed and why he doesn't immediately remove his hood. I think all of this will be on Winter Night. And for that matter, I think Rand and Tam will be staying at the inn that night, which will allow us to get this scene once everyone else has gone to bed. Then, given some of the other scenes we have in the teaser, such as people dancing in circles on the green, and it's clearly not raining out, I think those must occur the next day on Beltane, and we'll see the festival. And then that is when I think the actual attack will happen. I can't finish talking about the teaser until we talk about that last line. Who is saying, and you can't outrun a fade? It's not Moiraine. It doesn't sound like Nynaeve or Egwene, and it wouldn't be them. It could be any of the Aes Sedai characters. There seems to be maybe a hint of a threat in the way that someone is saying this, so maybe an antagonistic character like Liandrin, or maybe a dark friend character. It seems very plausible to me that we would have a dark friend character, something in the vein of the woman who attacks Rand and Mat in a barn on their journeys in the Eye of the World. And I have speculated for a while that we could see Azuka Hoyle playing such a role. We expect to see her in episode 3, introduced at the same inn where we meet Tom, and she's supposed to be playing a character called Dana. But I've thought for a while this is probably a sort of hybrid character, that it could include a number of other smaller roles, and one of those could be a dark friend. I think if we listen to sort of these two possibilities in my mind, if we listen to Kate Fleetwood's accent as Liandrin and Azuka Hoyle's accent, I lean more towards Azuka Hoyle. I think it sounds a little bit more like her voice. It's just purely a guess, but the best guess I have to go on right now. Let me know all of your thoughts on this Shadowspawn teaser as well. And now let's end with some happier pictures. This one seems to tie right in. It is Moiraine standing in the village green with a soft, almost smile. It appears to be daytime, and so this lends strength to the idea that she and Lan arrive on Winter Night, but get to spend some time in the village the next day for Beltane, before the attack occurs. I do wonder who she could be looking at. It appears to be someone shorter than her, so likely not any of the 3 ta'veren, but perhaps Nynaeve or Egwene. I do really love the softness of her expression because this is a side we don't often see from Moiraine, but still, it's an Aes Sedai look and open to interpretation. We have this shot of Rand and Egwene standing next to their horses. This seems to be after they begin their journey based on their costumes, but my guess would be very early in said journey. Their apparent intimacy is fitting given some other images we've seen, including, of course, this perhaps sexual encounter they appear to have in the Winespring Inn. But we can also recall this image that appeared in Entertainment Weekly, where Egwene's thoughts seemed very far from Rand. In this one, she's gazing at him in love, just as he does with her. Of everything we've seen of the two of them, this one most clearly shows her feelings for him, but it would seem she has some conflict with herself, and there are other thoughts that trouble her. So far, Rand appears to be the more single-minded of the two. I'm very much looking forward to their relationship being further developed in the show so that there's much greater conflict for the audience as well as the characters about whether or not they can stay together. And then we have this shot of Lan, which I would place in the camp of the Aes Sedai who have captured Logain. We can see a glimpse of a red tent, which we've also seen in these shots. I would hazard a guess that Lan is looking at Nynaeve, as we know that she is there as well, and that for a time, Moiraine is off in shelter being healed. I can't imagine there is another person he would look at with such tenderness. I also love that we will be given more opportunity to see the feelings between Lan and Nynaeve develop. And then surprise, we got another poster. And this one I'm really excited about. It's probably my favorite one so far. Unlike the last one that I was kind of iffy on, I'm all about this one. Plus, it was really fun the way they rolled it out because they did not just release this image. Instead, sending out puzzle pieces on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and having fans come together to put together the image before they released the final one. So that was lots of fun. There are some familiar elements in this poster. We've got the dark and light in the sky with a sort of Aes Sedai symbol-like quality to it. And in the foreground, we have the threads of different colors that we understand are channeling from the official description of this image. So that's really interesting because in the teaser trailer that we saw, channeling looked a little bit different, but this is how they have been depicting it in posters. These two elements, the colored threads and the sky, also were seen in the first poster that was released. And then the rest of this image is also recognizable as Moiraine and Lan during this Shadowspawn attack in Emond's Field. It's really pretty badass image, the way Moiraine is holding on to the Trollocs' head in this stance that she has with Lan behind her. It also seems like the village and the Winespring Inn are really going to take some damage. Overall, I just really love this image, the character portrayals of Moiraine and Lan here, and the overall impression and effect of this poster was really spot on for me. And it makes me hopeful that we're going to get some other characters featured in additional posters going forward. So we seem to be in that phase of marketing where they're throwing a lot of stuff at us, and I couldn't be happier about that. In case you couldn't tell, I really love all of this extra content we've been getting from the show lately. I want to hear all your thoughts in the comments. I have so many other videos I have planned, so be a subscriber, smash that notification bell, and until next time, gird your loins, my friends.